Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon your brothers and sisters. In today's video, I wanted to talk about a project which I had abandoned not long before I actually quit YouTube for a period of time. It's called Project Luminous, okay? And basically what I was going to do is I was going to compile stories of the Risale-i, okay, into this one book, okay? And I was essentially going to describe these stories in a sort of novel-like way, in like a descriptive manner, okay? Now, I never got to doing this because I quit YouTube. And I didn't immediately start on this project when I came up with the idea for it, because I was already working on a different novel. So I thought to myself, okay, when I finish this novel, I'm going to then work on this project. But it never came to it was never started. So, I'm back in YouTube. I'm back at YouTube now, and I would like to, start working on this project because I'm not really active on Substack apart from like posting my videos from YouTube. I haven't really been doing anything on it, so I would like to start writing something. Now, the purpose of Project Luminous was to make the Risale-i more appealing to young people, okay? So the reason for that is because the Risale-i like from what I've observed, I think the Risale-i has become very hard for especially young people to read and understand. And that's because this is, after all, a collection of Quranic commentary. This isn't just some Charles Dickens novel or like a thriller that you can just pick up and read with ease while drinking a nice cup of hot chocolate. It's a completely different story. And especially, the language is heavy. It's a heavy text to sort of read and digest, and especially for young people, it's very difficult, given the fact that we're also very addicted to various forms of digital entertainment, things like YouTube and video games, social media. We're really addicted to this stuff, and it becomes very difficult to read the Risale-i. I mean, you would be surprised what a nightmare. Let me not say nightmare, it's a bit of a strong wording there, but how extremely difficult it is to, for example, just read 10, 20 pages of the Risale-i after, engaging in some form of digital entertainment. Like, for example, let's say you're going to read the Risale-i, okay? Before you read the Risale-i, if you decide to, for example, go on social media for 20, 30 minutes, or, and just scroll through Reels or TikTok, or you decide to, for example, play a game like Sea of Thieves, after that, right, even after you do that for 20, 30 minutes, it'll become so difficult to read like even just 10, 20 pages of the Risale-i. It becomes very difficult. I don't know the science behind it, but maybe it's because of like the overstimulation of digital entertainment. I would be very curious to know like this, the reason as to why digital entertainment makes it so difficult for us to do something like reading an analog book. But the point is, the Risale-i has become very difficult for young people to read. This is not made. This is enhanced by digital entertainment. That obstacle. The wall which is preventing us from reading it. However, the good news is that we're still capable of reading. Okay. And the kind of books that young people can still read. Okay. Is, for example, like novels, okay, like things about like murder, these sorts of scary thrillers and whatnot. People could still read these books, because they're dramatic, they're very descriptive. They might not be very, very trash tier quality, but the good news is people can read these things, okay, even if they don't have a lot of educational value. People can still read these things, and that's good. Because if you sort of think about it, imagine taking the first story of the words and putting that into a descriptive format. You just want to sort of think about that. That would be amazing, actually. Like just a little bit of context. The first story of the words, okay, in the Risale-i Nur collection is about two men who journey into the deserts. You know, one of them is, and obviously the desert is dangerous. It's filled with blistering heat. It's filled with a lack of water. There's a scarcity of food. There are also bandits that want to just absolutely annihilate you, who want to rob you, maybe sell you into slavery. You know, they don't have very good intentions. And so, you know, one of the two men, one of the travelers, he decides to take himself under the protection of a tribal chief because that's pretty much the logical thing to do. And then the other man is pretty arrogant. He doesn't think he needs anyone's protection, and he ends up getting cooked, as the young people like to say these days. He gets cooked. Now, this is a very iconic story from the Risale-i Nur, right? If you look at the sort of Risale-i Nur community, or the Nurist community, this is a very iconic story, okay? Now, I don't know the exact reasons why. Maybe it's because it's a very quintessential example of what the Risale-i Nur's message is about. Maybe it's because this is the first story that appears in the words, which is a very fundamental text in the Risale-i Nur collection. I don't know the exact reason. Could be those. But anyways, this is a very iconic story, and if you just think about it, if this story was put in a very descriptive way, you know, it could be 5, 10, 20 pages long, okay, but, you know, like short stories, that would just be much more appealing for young people to read, you know. So we would be sort of adopting to the change in circumstances, to the current environment, you know. Because it's very important to young people that we, okay, by we I mean me and young people, read the Risale-i Nur. Because in this time and age, there is a really terrifying current of disbelief, okay? It's not just atheism, there's really a whole myriad of various forms of ugly disbelief. You know, it's manifest in atheism, deism, you know, there's like apatheism, right? All these forms of all these scary, ugly forms of disbelief that are basically drowning young people. And the reason for that is because young people don't have something to protect themselves, right? They don't really have a foundation of the Islamic religion. They don't have a foundation, and as a result, they're easily swept under the currents of you know, these very deviant beliefs, you know. So it's really important that we read the Risale-i Nur, but the problem is that it's very difficult for us to read the Risale-i Nur, and there are many reasons for that, which is why the solution, okay, the solution that Project Luminous has is that it takes the stories of the Risale-i Nur and makes them descriptive, okay? It makes it like really, it turns them into these like epic, fast-paced, interesting, vivid, flourishing short stories, okay, which appeal to young people, okay. That's essentially that's essentially the essence of Project Luminous. That's the purpose, okay. It's meant to appeal to young people and make it easier for them to read the Risale-i Nur. Now, I do regret abandoning this project. I wish I did work on it in the past, but the past is the past. We only have the present moment, so we just sort of have to work on from here, make the most of it. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please pray for me, and I will see you guys next time, inshallah.